look what we've got. So this is a coarse chop. This also helps separate some of that inner skin away from the meat. So this is the batch that we had started the next day. You can see it's a little bit darker in there. More tannins because it's not as much time. After 3 to 5 days of soaking, it looks like these ones are going to take maybe 4 or 5 days. You can test them by when you pour off your water, you can actually just bite into them and see, is this super bitter? Is this something I'd want to eat or not? And if you've gotten to the point where the bitterness seems like it's leached out, you'll drain off your water and you'll take those crushed soaked nuts and you can lay them right in your dehydrator. We like this Nesco circular dehydrator for food items because you can control the temperature, keep it high so you don't have any molding with things that have high water content such as soaked nuts, and they stack up to like 12 layers high. So you'll just do a nice thin layer of the nuts all around, dehydrate them till they're totally dry. How many people do you think are harvesting acorns in Atlanta right now? If what you ate was based off of you and your community's labor, what would you eat? We've been exploring those questions, and as we've done that, we've looked to find foods that we can easily produce for ourselves and our friends and our families and our communities that are widely available. And edible acorns grow all over the world. Many of our ancestors ate them all over the world as a staple food crop, mainly as porridges and breads. We have access to a very large old white oak, which make these gorgeous, large, only slightly tannic and bitter acorns. And we're going to share what we've learned on how to process them. We've learned that cracking them lengthwise works really well. So sometimes we fluctuate between having the pointy end down, so you have the flat end to hit the hammer on, or you can have the flat end right on your board or stone, whatever you're using, and hit the pointed end. Either way works well. You want to watch what you're doing and crack it a couple times so you see it split open, and then peel it off. If there's still some of the skin on there, that's fine. When we start leaching them and grinding them, it'll come off in the leach water. So we've got perfect little acorn right there. They usually break into halves. And this is one that had a crack on the top, so if we crack that one open, we'll probably see that, yes, the area where the crack was, a bug got into it, and there's a rotten spot and a little bit of mold right there. So if you look at the end of them, you can just see if they've already cut open or if there's mold starting to grow on them. Here's a bowl that we already have cracked. Got nice halves in here. They do still have some of the skins, and we're just gonna grind them up as is, and that skin will float up to the top in our leach water. So next step is getting your vessel that you're going to leach them in, and traditionally, and probably the best way to do it, is if you have a clean river source or spring source, what our ancestors would do is they would grind these up with stones or whatever type of mortar and pestle they had, and they would put them in this basket. So you'd have a fresh supply of cool, clean water running through the basket that had the ground up acorns in it. And they leave it in there for a few days till that fresh water just pulled all the bitter components out. So for today, we're gonna use one of these, as they say, food safe buckets. Throw your acorns in and fill with fresh spring or filtered water. At least a few inches above you can see the skins have already started to float to the top. We'll be changing the water on this every at least 12 hours for the next 5 days. Once I have them in here with the water, I label everything that I do so I always know what date it was started, so I don't have to worry about remembering it. So I just take masking tape and just literally put the date. This set was started on 10/21, so we are 6 days out with it. You can see this bitter water floating at the top, and what we would do is pour it off. And if this was the final rinse, we would get a strainer or colander out and really intensely rinse these off. But see how nice and cleaned off they look. So if we had our sink over here and had these ones that we just looked at rinsed, we would then put these on our dehydrator. We like using these Nesco round dehydrators for foods that are water rich rather than our herbs, because you can control the temperature and you can stack them like 12 high so they actually hold a lot. We use the liner that is solid, so the little parts when they dry they get very tiny. They get a third of the size that you see here, and so they don't fall through the cracks of the dehydrator. This is a set that was finished dehydrating. So the goal of this video is to show you how you can easily do this at your house. And the next step is grinding them into a powder so that you can use them as flour, so you can make breads, pancakes, mix them into your recipes, put them in your porridge. And one of the easiest ways to do that is with a coffee grinder. This is a very old coffee grinder from the 80s and it still works. So we'll demonstrate with this grinder. And this is the grinder that we use when we're producing the acorn flour. It's a traditional electric herb grinder for Chinese medicine, and it will grind hard roots, barks, and all of that, so that the amount we're doing, we don't short out small appliances. You can toast these pieces in the oven and then grind them and make a delicious coffee substitute. All right, we've got this gorgeous flour. It could get ground up a little bit more. And as far as recipes go for baking, if a recipe calls for 2 cups of flour, you can replace half of whatever flour amount is in your recipe with acorn flour. So if you had 2 cups of flour, you would replace 1 cup with acorn flour. Acorn flour.